You're listening to the Mark Petroni radio program, heard exclusively on News Talk Saga 960.
And we are back with more on News Talk Saga 960. So very glad you could join us on this Thursday edition of the show. Miles Christian joining us. He's our regular from Wisconsin. He likes to fill us in on the goings-on. Wisconsin, of course, the state that outlawed voting boxes recently, or ballot boxes. And that was a decision that raised some eyebrows. And guess what? If it happened in Wisconsin, they can do it elsewhere. Another way maybe to make these elections a little less prone to mules ahead of the midterms. But you've got a story that you've been working on, including vicious street crime that is happening in Madison, which is getting worse by the day. And the courts have delivered a kick in the nuts. I guess I shouldn't use that word. A kick in the gotchis to the justice system in general because of the way that they treated a couple of people who had committed horrific crimes. Talk a little bit about what's going on there, Miles.
So Madison has been dealing with this gigantic crime wave that's getting worse and worse every week. It's been getting just incredibly worse every month for several years now. Recently, there was an individual who was riding their bicycle on the bike path and was robbed for their bike at gunpoint. We've seen from where it's gone from, cars used to rummage through cars and steal change and other things out of people's cars, and they started stealing the cars or going to people's houses and stealing their keys to their cars. These kids are stealing and crashing cars all the time. Just recently, there was an incident where the kids stole a car, crashed it twice. On the second time they crashed the car, they decided to shoot at the individuals in the car they crashed into. And now, separate from that, there was an incident where the DA did not want to prosecute the individuals. The individuals were in Oregon, which is a small town outside of Madison. The individuals shot a couple in Oregon. Luckily, they both survived, but they both got shot in the head. The newspapers talked about one got in the face, the other got in the jaw. You shot two random strangers in the head. Thank God they survived. And the district attorney, Ishmael Azan, will not prosecute any of the individuals involved because he says there's not enough evidence to prosecute. You have a car, you know which car it was, you have a gun, you can't determine which individual. It's absolutely insane. And there's this huge influx of crime coming here from Chicago. I don't know if it's the majority of the criminals, but a large percentage of the criminals who are coming up here and doing all these horrible acts are gang members from Chicago, or young kids that have grown up in a culture in big part because of the crime of Chicago. It's coming up here. I know there's a lot of great people who come here from Chicago who start a new life, come to Wisconsin, come to Madison area. There's all sorts of people come here from Illinois and make a great life for themselves. And it's they shouldn't get lumped into the same category, but there is a huge amount of criminals coming here from the Chicago area, and no one's doing really anything to deal with it.
So Chicago, Illinois is exporting their crime problems to Wisconsin.
Yeah, and heck, Rahm Emanuel was a terrible mayor as well. Well,
they got that lunatic over there right now, Lori
Lightfoot.
Yeah.
And our mayor in the Madison area is a carbon copy. It's a woman named Satya Rhodes Conway. I'm sure her name was originally, Sharon or Karen or some other boring, dull name, and she probably went off to India in college and took hallucinogenics, and now she goes by Satya. And she's from California originally. Oh, what a surprise! But our mayor, Satya Rhodes Conway, a woman who just the most arrogant, idiotic communist. I sound like such a conservative when I say, oh, this communist, but this woman is literally a communist in every way. She's now putting forth this thing called the guaranteed income where they want to give out $500 a month to people, even though there's already existing welfare and assistance agencies that could easily be in charge of distributing this money. They are creating a new group, this guaranteed income group, so that her and her cronies will get, high-paying jobs to give poor people $500. It's like you're taking millions of dollars so that a handful of people will get paid thousands of dollars a month, so they can give poor people hundreds of dollars a month. I mean, I am very liberal on a lot of things. I'm conservative on a couple things, I guess. I'm a mix and of these political issues. But like what's going on in Madison, it's not liberalism. It's a mixture of socialism and communism, and it is destroying the city.
Well, I'm not surprised. What was the justification given for the release of these individuals who shot 2 people in the head?
They shot 2 people in the head, and it was just lack of evidence. Now, and one of them was on probation, so he broke his probation, but he's not being charged with a crime. Now, whether it was the individual driving or someone in his car, the individual needs to then either say who did it, or he has to take the rap. I mean, you can't be like, well, we don't know which one of you did it, so nobody gets charged. I mean, it's absolutely insane. And every single week there are incidences of, police reporting to gunshots in this area. There's been at least 4 different times in the last 4 years that people have been shooting at each other on the highway that goes through the county known as the Beltline. And I've heard other people talk about finding holes on their cars and things like that, where it's like, there's this massive amount of crime that we know about. Let's think about all the crime that probably isn't reported. People getting things stolen that they're not calling it in. People, being victim to crime. A lot of times people don't even report it.
What about the defund the police stuff that was going on in Wisconsin? Is that over? Did that have an impact on any of this?
It's not. Oh yeah. I mean, I can't believe they're actually listening to these lunatics. And it's not just defund the police. They, like I've said, they've got a very racist viewpoint of letting individuals out of the Dane County Jail simply based on race, with no anything as far as what was the crime they committed. They just want anybody that is of color to be released from the jails regardless of whatever crime they've committed, which is absolutely insane. These people want to not just abolish the police, they want to abolish the entire jail system.
Prison abolition is climate justice.
What the heck are you talking about?
Universal housing is climate justice.
With all due respect, what the fuck are you talking about?
And they've been advocating for this literally at environmental rallies with one of our Senate candidates, the guy running against Ron Johnson.
A lot of the things that we may see as innovative, the things we may see as groundbreaking, they're just things indigenous communities have been doing forever. And we're just finally catching up.
Everything that guy just says is bullshit. Thank you.
Our current lieutenant governor was there at that environmental rally where they talked about abolishing the police and abolishing the prison system and free housing for everybody. But there's 2 organizations, these supposed nonprofit organizations in Madison, that have been advocating for a lot of these horrible policies. They used George Floyd's death to make literally millions of dollars off of it for their organizations. They're not officially Black Lives Matter. They have their own little names, their own little groups, and they work together with the Party for Liberation and Socialism, which is a political party. So you have non-profit organizations getting millions of dollars from the state and county, and then working directly with a political party, which seems like there's something unethical or possibly illegal there. And there is a handful of women who have made a great amount of profit off of very serious issues about policing and poverty and so forth. And they're making a lot of money, and I don't think anything has improved for anybody, poor people or the problems that they may be having with police. I don't think any of that's getting fixed, but a lot of women making money off the issue.
How big a deal is crime heading into the midterms?
here's the insane part. Well, one of many insane parts. That the crime doesn't seem to be affecting people's vote at all. You know, conservatives are already voting conservative. Marquette Law School just recently came out with some polls, and they've usually been pretty accurate. And they're saying that the governor is going to get reelected, and they think that the lieutenant governor, who is just this awful politician, is actually going to not just win his primary against the other Democratic candidates, but that he will potentially beat Ron Johnson. Which is just, I mean, I'm kind of shocked, but like I've been saying, whatever way people feel about Roe versus Wade and all that, that will have a major effect on the election, and it was going to have a major effect before the decision was made, and now with that decision, you're going to see a lot of Democrats come out who probably wouldn't have voted, and it's also going to energize a lot of young Democrats, and I've been saying it for years that you've got these hardcore socialist groups that are being allowed to go into the schools and advocate absurd policies to children now. This has been going on over the last decade, where these hardcore groups
CRT
are going
types.
in.
Okay, so critical race theory, that's being taught to young children, is it?
I mean, and really, it's CRT isn't even almost about race or anything in the end, because it's like what they're really advocating for is the destruction of capitalism and their absurd ideology about race and gender and all this stuff that just, it's not what the parents want. It's not probably even what a lot of teachers probably even want, but somebody who's also to blame for this situation in Wisconsin was our former governor, who basically said, yeah, you don't need to have a teaching license to be a teacher. And he did that, and they made it so that a lot of people with no credentials could be teaching in schools. And then, oh, wow, a bunch of crazy socialists took advantage of that situation and now have been in the schools and involved. And they're also using a lot of tax money, the school's money and the tax money, to get these kids out to political rallies where they do these massive walkouts of school, and they always walk out and they go up to the Capitol, and it's like thousands will walk out of school, hundreds show up to the rally because a bunch of them are like, great, we get to walk out of school, hundreds of them go up to the Capitol, and it's Democrat politician, Democrat politician, Democrat politician. So they're using hundreds of thousands of, if not millions of tax dollars in the process of getting these kids involved in Democrat politics, not even liberal or green or progressive politics, but really Democrat politics. And the Republicans in the state have just been completely oblivious and ignoring this for years now.
All right. So what is the talk going into the midterms? I mean, so you think that the Democrats are going to do better than what some people think?
Yeah. I mean, a few months ago, it really looked like, wow, the Republicans would, the Republicans had so much that they could talk about: crime and gas prices and inflation and the terrible job that Joe Biden's doing, which, only like 26% of Democrats of an older age want Joe Biden to run for re-election. Something like 6% of the younger generation of Democrats want Joe Biden to run for re-election. I mean, the vast majority of all Democrats want Biden to not run for re-election. Republicans were in a great spot as far as being able to take back the House, and I would say, with the Senate races, there aren't that many Senate races that they could say potentially win, but it was still a possibility. And now with this whole issue of Roe versus Wade it being a major factor in the election, I think that the Democrats may keep the House.
Well, some of the polling I've seen suggests that it's neutral, that it's not going to have much of an impact one way or another, that the people are going to vote Democrat. We're going to do that anyway. And the people
That's a good point. I mean, the thing I'm most surprised about is the lack of protests that I have seen about this issue. I was saying once before with you that 2011 labor protests, major rallies in Wisconsin, and when Trump got elected, even before January, when he first got elected in 2016, there were large demonstrations about it, and then of course the Women's March had hundreds of thousands of people. They never achieved more than 1,000 or 2,000 people for a rally about this issue, and I'm pretty surprised about that.
Absolutely. All right. Well, interesting times ahead. Thanks for filling us in. I think it's a horrible situation with the crime out there because, you used to think of Wisconsin as a pretty safe state. But
Madison's gone down the tube, and it's taken a lot of it's putting a lot of the small towns in danger now. And like I said, a lot of it's all back to the crime from Chicago that Lori Lloyd is sending our way.
Well, I guess they want to maybe ship out some of that criminal activity outside of the city. I mean, we're constantly hearing of dozens of people killed in that city, and so unfortunately, the contagion appears to have spread to Madison, which really
one last thing I got to add is, there's the horrible tragedy in Highland where 7 people were shot and everything. That same 4th of July weekend in Chicago, there was 70 people killed throughout the city because there's just gang violence going on in Chicago, and more people die in Chicago than Iraq or Afghanistan these days.
Brutal. All right, Miles. Well, thanks for your time today. I really appreciate that.
Thanks for having me.
Miles Kristen coming to us from the great state of Wisconsin, in the area in and around Verona, Wisconsin. Let's take a break. Back with more on Newstalk Saga 960 and the Mark Petrano Show after this.
Stream us live at saga960am.ca.
You were listening to the Mark Petroni radio program, heard exclusively on Newstalk Saga 960.